Christine Pitawanich with your weekly recap, where we catch you up on some of the biggest stories of the week. We begin with a Hillsboro father facing a long recovery. Investigators say teenagers shot him at a gas station while his young son was inside the car. Dominique Coleman says her stepfather, who goes by T, stopped at this Arco gas station on Northeast Cornell and 17th Avenue around 8:30 Monday night. She says a group of teens started yelling at him in the parking lot, shot him, then took off. Strangers helped T, who was bleeding on the ground. 3 teens were arrested and charged with attempted murder and first-degree assault. Holman says her stepfather is a family man who loves his kids and will likely be in a wheelchair for the foreseeable future.
Stuff like this has to stop. There's just too much hate in the world and not enough love. And people don't deserve this. This shouldn't happen to people, but it does.
Holman says her stepfather is the sole provider for their family and does not have health insurance, making a difficult situation even harder. This week, we also followed up on a story about a woman who's had multiple surgeries after she was attacked in Northeast Portland by a dog she says belonged to a homeless person. Our Celine Stevens looked into how to protect yourself legally if a similar situation happens to you.
It could be a Class A misdemeanor, or if the injury is serious enough, it can even be a felony in Oregon.
Last Thursday, on March 27th, 68-year-old Giovanni Johnson was attacked by a dog near Northeast 7th and Broadway in Portland. Since then, she's had 3 surgeries after her leg was ripped to shreds. Her daughter speaking with us Wednesday.
I'm glad she's alive. That was my first thought. I'm glad she's alive. My mom could have bled out. It could have been more severe. But I'm thankful that she's still with us.
The Portland Police Bureau says in their incident report, a friend of the owner stopped the attack, and upon officers' request, Multnomah County Animal Services responded to the scene, taking the dog. Here's what steps to take if something like this happens to you.
Best thing to do is after getting the help and calling the police is to get a picture of the dog, get a picture of the dog's owner. Try to identify if there's any witnesses on the scene that saw the attack and get that information.
Alexander Cambier, an attorney with Kafori McDougal, says there's a criminal statute in Oregon that makes it a violation and possibly a crime to maintain a dangerous dog.
Whether you're looking at a legal recourse that is civil or criminal, it is going to matter the previous history of that dog. Essentially, you have to have some evidence that dog has been dangerous or that the owner knew that it was dangerous in the past.
Multnomah County says it's looking to classify the dog in this situation as a dangerous dog, which they define as a dog that causes the serious physical injury or death of a person or it being used as a weapon. In these cases, the owner receives a notice of infraction, which they can appeal. If not appealed and suspension of ownership is sought, the dog becomes animal services property and will either be euthanized or placed in a dangerous animal facility. If the owner was homeless, Cambier says there's not much that can be done with a civil suit.
It just doesn't make logistical sense to spend years on litigation when there are no assets, when there is no insurance. To cover the cost of that litigation.
Instead, it would need to be approached as a criminal matter, which is best done with a record.
You want to get that record started. Even if the first incident isn't necessarily serious, creates a record that person was on notice that their dog was dangerous and can make it easier for the authorities to act in the future.
Celine Stevens, KGW News.
So the main message there, record and document everything. As of Thursday, police say there have been no arrests. Meantime, a county official says they're not aware of any dangerous dog facilities operating in the county. That means it appears the only option would be putting the dog down. This week, federal agents busted what they called the, quote, Portland Sunday Market. It was set up like a farmer's market, but in Gresham, but for also illegal drugs. They arrested 46-year-old Kevin Olson, who is a convicted felon on federal drug and gun charges. The market had everything from marijuana and psilocybin mushrooms to cocaine, LSD, and ketamine. Investigators say they also found a lot of guns and ammo at Olson's home in Boring. This week on The Story, our Blair Best followed up on empty beds inside detox centers in Portland. In part, it appears it's because of the lack of recovery housing available afterward. But we spoke with housing providers, and they also have empty beds. This is inside one of Premier Sober Living's recovery homes in Southeast Portland. They have 108 beds across the city. Over 20 of them are empty, just like these. They say typically costs are covered by money from groups like Care Oregon, a nonprofit health insurance agency funded by programs like Medicaid and Medicare. But they say since August, they have not been able to access that money. Now they're turning away dozens of people each day and are considering closing some homes.
20 to 30 people per day we turn away.
Yeah, there's people that I've had to say, hey, I can't carry you anymore. These funds didn't come in. You have to go back to the streets. They return to use, they return back to detox centers and repeat the cycle.
In a statement, Care Oregon said it is continuing to use what it calls flex funds to pay for sober housing, saying, quote, due to concerns about fraud, waste, and abuse in this space, Care Oregon has made adjustments to our HRSF process in an effort to keep these services available while being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. Well, President Trump's announcement of new tariffs on what he dubbed Liberation Day did not get a welcome reaction on Wall Street. The markets saw their biggest one-day drop since early in the pandemic. Meantime, local businesses are bracing for the fallout from the new tariffs. Our Alma McCarty spoke with a contractor in the construction industry who says it may take a year before we see the full impact.
From electronics to automobiles, coffee to clothing, new tariffs are likely to mean higher prices in dozens of industries.
It will interrupt the ability for us to get the materials that we need to actually do the work.
Mike Salzgiver is the CEO of the local Associated General Contractors chapter, which represents commercial contractors building everything from high-rises to highways.
All the big stuff.
The industry is reliant on foreign imports for much of their materials. Salzgiver says contractors who are still feeling the effects of the pandemic will now face more disruption and delays.
I've been around this industry a long time, and my biggest worry is that what is being communicated to the public as wanting to be helpful will actually have the opposite effect.
While the president touted his new plan as a new golden age for America, bringing back manufacturing and jobs to the United States, some experts aren't so sure.
We haven't seen a trade policy where you're putting up barriers that has promoted growth.
Dr. Brian Adams is a professor of finance at the University of Portland. He explains it won't be immediately possible for industries to shift to American-made products.
The logistics of moving manufacturing from a foreign country into the U.S. is not something that can be done over the short run. It generally takes years for that to happen.
Alma McCarty, KGW News.
Also this week on Capitol Hill, you may have heard of this, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker broke the record for the longest speech in Senate history, clocking in at 25 hours, 4 minutes. The previous record was 24 hours and 18 minutes when a senator back in 1957 spoke in opposition to the Civil Rights Act. Booker, though, is protesting President Trump's actions involving immigration and other issues. Some of his Democratic colleagues gave him a break from speaking by asking him questions, including Oregon Senator Ron Wyden, who joined in. Take a listen.
Since Donald Trump took office, what we have seen in these town hall meetings is fear and terror, and I might add, record turnouts. My question to my friend from New Jersey is, what are you hearing from home?
I'm hearing a lot of fear, a lot of anger. I'm hearing head of hospitals say that this is outrageous, the threats to our hospitals in New Jersey.
After the marathon speech, Booker told reporters he didn't drink anything beforehand to make sure he wouldn't have to leave, even to go to the bathroom. His fellow Democrats gave him a standing ovation at the end of his speech. Now here's a look at your weather.
Hello, and thank you for streaming us on KGW Plus on this Friday. I am meteorologist Chris McGinnis in for Rod Hill. So a frosty start for some of us, and I I want to bring this back because it's worth noting that we can still have frost and freeze conditions well into April. Hillsboro, Salem, Battleground, I'm looking at you. The typical date for the last freezing temperature in Battleground is April 26th. I bring that up because Battleground has been hovering around 31 degrees this morning. So a little frosty. Frost advisory continues outside of Portland and Vancouver until 8 o'clock. Right now it's 34 Hillsboro, Battleground back down to 31. It's 33 in Gresham. And down in the Willamette Valley, mid-30s pretty common. McMinnville 33, Almsville 36, and Aurora, say that 3 times fast. Check it in with 38 degrees. The sun coming up over Mount Hood, not a cloud in the sky in the eastern sky. A good-looking Friday forecast. In fact, today is probably going to be the nicest day of the next 7 when it comes to sky conditions and temperatures. Right after the chilly start, I've got us at 70 degrees or so by 3 o'clock, maybe inching a little higher than that. It's just a beautiful day. And this is one of those days, I think, as we get into April, you really start to appreciate the fact that our days have gotten so much longer. We are knocking on the door of 13 hours of daylight, and we are still adding more than 3 minutes of daylight per day. So pretty cool there with the sunset this evening at 7:43. Wall-to-wall sunshine for our Friday. Futurecast again shows temperatures in the Willamette Valley. Upper 60s for a lot of folks. I think Portland gets to 70 or 71 today. Mid-60s at the coast, and even after the chilly start, Bend, Baker City, Burns, you woke up to temperatures in the 20s this morning. Your Friday afternoon should easily get into the 60s, so a nice close to the week. Okay, let's get into the weekend because the weekend still looks 50-50-ish here, and I'll show you why. Right now, our Friday looks gorgeous, but our next weather maker churning out there in the Gulf of Alaska, it's going to drive a cool front to the Pacific Northwest coast late Saturday night. So the clouds will be on the increase ahead of that system tomorrow. When I say that, it'll be high, thin cloud cover, so we'll see the sunshine. The sun will be sort of filtered. You'll see that on Futurecast here as I roll the clock on our computer model. Tomorrow starts off fully sunny, but the clouds roll in during the day. It's a dry day and a mild day, and in fact, as long as the clouds are fairly thin, I still think low to mid-70s are within reach in the Willamette Valley. If the clouds are a little thicker, we may not quite get there, but the point is tomorrow's still dry and still pretty nice. All right, fast forward into overnight Saturday. Rain begins to brush up against the Oregon coast and coast range, maybe some sprinkles anyway. And then that system comes ashore early Sunday morning. So it'll be raining steadily, I think, before sunup on Sunday morning at the Oregon coast. That system then works its way inland, but it doesn't just come brushing through. It slows and stretches out a little bit. And so the impact that will have is that when the rain gets in here on Sunday morning, I don't think it's rainy from then on. I think we'll get a little shot of rain, a little break, a little shot of rain, a little break. But as we go deeper into the afternoon, the rain will become a little more consistent, a little heavier. And by the time things are said and done, Sunday's going to wind up being pretty wet, but probably not until later in the day. It is interesting to note that our modeling suggests the Oregon coast picks up upwards of an inch of rain from late Saturday night through 12 or 11:59 Sunday evening, while the I-5 corridor gets on the order of a quarter to a third of an inch. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of the gradient, so to speak, in the rain, where it'll be steadier for more of the day at the coast on Sunday, not quite as much in the Willamette Valley, and certainly less up in the Cascade foothills. Snow levels, by the way, in the Cascades still above the passes, I think, but those snow levels drop down to about 4,000 feet or so next weekend. All that being said, Saturday's forecast looks good. It'll be a little warmer than Friday with highs in the low to mid 70s, especially as long as those clouds remain thin enough that we see nothing but filtered sunshine. But Sunday rain develops, and how early? It could be as early as 9, 10 o'clock in the morning where we see our first little bit of rain. The rain, though, the trend will be to get steadier and heavier as we get into the afternoon. So certainly cooler and wetter, I almost said wetty or wetter for Sunday. And then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we've got just the typical shower and sun break routine here for the first full week of April. The average high this time of year, by the way, is 58. So we go from 70 to 63 to 57. So a little bit of everything in that first full week of April forecast. What else would you expect, right? Thank you for streaming us on KGW+. I'm meteorologist Chris McGinnis. I hope you have a great weekend.
And that's a wrap on your weekly recap. Again, I'm Christine Pitawanich. Remember, you can catch up on the latest headlines anytime on KGW.com, your KGW app, or our YouTube channel.